Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Advisor with Stacey Chillemi. I'm really excited today because we have a very special guest on our show. Before we begin, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors who make this show happen, iHeartRadio and Speaker. Thank you so much for everything you do and for supporting us through our venture. And today we're very excited because we have Dr. Kristen here today, and she is an amazing woman who is a firm believer in integrative medicine, and she has different ways to show people how they can actually take their mind and body and make that connection and how we can actually combat different illnesses when we put our mind and body and we connect them, the two together. And there's so many ways, so many people, they have illnesses and they give up or they just don't know where to begin to go to. And there's so much of that Google, information out there that's so untrue. There's a lot of fake news out there. And sometimes you have to hear it from a professional. And that's why Dr. Kristen is here today, because she's going to talk to you about different illnesses and how you can make the connection with your mind and body and actually improve your overall health and live the life that you always wanted to live and be able to feel your full potential in life. So it's so awesome to have you here today. I am so glad you're here. Can you tell everybody a little about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, a little bit about me is the reason I'm here today, and what I love to talk about is how we can cure ourselves from what are thought to be incurable diseases. I
Right.
myself have lived through this. I went through a decade of living with a disease called rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune condition, which about 60% of women are living with now in our Western culture. And we're told that it's hopeless. You're going to die from these diseases if you don't take medication, and your body's going to deteriorate before your eyes. We're seeing women go through these severe menopause symptoms, which are associated with these autoimmune conditions because it
Yeah.
messes with our hormonal systems as well. And then we're told that's normal. That's just how life is. And
Right.
this isn't to vilify anyone. No one knew any better, and so this is the thing. The only way I was able to find out about it is from living through it myself. And
Right.
the disease rheumatoid arthritis, it deteriorates the tissues around your joint capsules. So I was at the point 10 years in where I was completely bedridden. I couldn't stand for longer than 5 minutes. I couldn't walk for longer than 5 minutes, and I couldn't sit for longer than 5 minutes. My life was a living nightmare. And at the same time, I'm a professional. I'm an entrepreneur. I've owned several companies, real estate investor, and my whole life deteriorated. I was
Yeah.
basically keeping going so that I could earn enough income so that
Mhm.
I could try different techniques to try and cure myself.
Yeah.
And so now I'm here, 6 years in remission, been teaching
Yeah.
for 5 years, and we've helped hundreds of women overcome all kinds of different autoimmune conditions, all the way from MS, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, IBS, Graves, Hashimoto's, lichen sclerosis, some really rare and weird ones, mystery illnesses. We've helped people overcome Lyme disease. We've
Yeah.
helped people
Wow.
overcome different types of cancers. And when I set out, I had no idea that this was going to be the path and this is who I was going to become. I really had to stand in the fire because, there's a lot of really strong belief systems out there that
Yeah.
that's not possible. And yet
Right.
I've now witnessed it so many times that I'm willing to stand here and say 100% it's possible. And for me, if I only was able to see someone else who had walked through that experience and come out the other side, it would have changed
Right.
everything for me.
Right.
And so I'm here to instill hope in those that are suffering and in the depths of the despair that comes along with chronic illness, and
Yeah.
let you know you 100% can overcome these diseases.
Oh, yes, for sure. 100%. When you went through all this, it was probably so hard for you, to get through this. And, how did how were you able not to get stuck or get depressed or, or if you did get depressed, how did you get yourself out of it? Because so many people, even myself, when I went through, battles with my own health, you get through points where you don't even want to wake up sometimes in the morning. If you're not feeling 100% and you're dealing with an illness, a serious illness, and it's affecting your life, it's affecting your quality of life. Many people become very depressed. Some people become very angry and anxiety, sets in because they just, are so anxious because they can't, they want to be able to function the way they did and they can't. So that frustration comes in, the depression comes in, I know I experienced it. I'm sure you did too. How did you not get stuck? And if you did get stuck, how did you get yourself unstuck to be move forward in life?
Yeah, oh my gosh. And to say, oh, was just rainbows and butterflies the whole time. And I'm a naturally optimistic person, which I am a naturally optimistic person. But something like that, it deteriorates your mental health drip by
Yeah,
drip by drip. And so I definitely circled depression several times and
yeah,
lived with chronic anxiety because you're now afraid of your own future. And
yeah,
because you're watching yourself deteriorate before your eyes, and mentally, you're like, this is not me. This is not who
right.
I am. I
Yeah,
remember going through this being like, oh my gosh, if I only had my body back, the things I would do. And,
yeah,
that's why I'm so passionate now because it's like, woo, still alive, right? And then it's like,
yeah,
and the anxiety is gone from my body, the depression's gone from my body. But at the time, this is what's so frustrating too, is because when you're in those states, you're just feeding the disease. And
yeah,
so it's this very frustrating, very upsetting way of living. And for me, I just had to get through each day. I had to take it one day at a time. And every day was like a living nightmare. It was. And it's not that I don't have fond memories during those times
yeah,
but every day it's all consuming of your mental space because the alarm bells are constantly going off in that mind body connection, right? And so it
mhm,
ends up being this disease feeding loop. By the time I was at my worst, I had three diagnoses. And the reason was it was just more symptoms. You
yeah,
kept getting more and more symptoms. So coming through that, what kept me going through that was thank goodness I have children
yeah,
because if there was a few moments, I'll be perfectly frank, that if there had been an opportunity to just take a pill and never wake up again, I would have taken it. I would have done it because it's excruciating. It is living in a human torture chamber 24/7. There's no break. And the
yeah,
mental anguish that comes along with that is no joke.
yes,
And so it was my children. And then a second piece was I I knew that I was meant to cure myself. I
yes,
knew I was meant to find a way and that I was going to teach other people. I had no idea how that was going to play out or what was going to happen, but I just knew it. And
yeah,
so it took about 10 years for me to hit my breakdown point where I really did hit a hopeless point. And fortunately for me, after I hit that hopeless point, it was when I was going through a security line at an airport. And rheumatologists had told me, if you don't take this medication, you're going to be in a wheelchair by the time you're 40. And at
right,
the time, I was in my 30s and
hmm,
I was in so much pain. I had sciatica all the way down my leg, and I'd just been told I needed a knee replacement, a hip replacement, an elbow replacement, and a shoulder replacement. So I'm told I need four joint replacements already.
yeah,
And there's just tears streaming down my face because I couldn't stand, and it was this long lineup. And the woman looked at me and said, "Ma'am, I'm going to insist we get you a wheelchair."
mm,
And it rocked my world. It just shook me
yeah,
because it was my worst nightmare. It's come
yes,
true. I'm sitting there looking at my daughters. They're looking at me worried. They've never seen their mom well. I was diagnosed only a couple months after my second daughter was born. And
wow,
so they're looking at me so concerned. And I just began to pray. I was like, please, just give me the answers and I will do whatever it takes and
yeah,
and live out this purpose, whatever you want me to do. Just
yeah,
please, now or never. If this isn't it, then please take me. I can't live like this anymore.
right,
And That's when my whole life changed, was in that moment. I could feel it come through me. I could feel the energy of whatever we want to call it, source, God, the universe. God's not worried about what you call them. Um, and and I knew it. And it was one thing after another. The answers did start to come. And
Yeah,
I came to discover it's not just one thing. Here I was trying all these different things, so frustrated, not knowing what's working or what's not working. And then
right.
all of a sudden clarity started to come into place. And one thing after another, the pieces of the puzzle came together.
That's wonderful. Oh, wow. That's some story. That's amazing. It really is. And
Mm,
how did you start to become, how did you start to move forward and start your health was started to improve? So many people don't even
mm,
know where to begin. So
yeah.
many people just accept it and they just live with it and they don't do anything about it. And they don't realize that sometimes it's the food we're eating, sometimes it's our mentality and the food we're eating. Sometimes it's just the way we're doing things. And there's so many things that could, we could do to improve our overall health. For you, how did you start to move forward and start to get healthier? Where was your beginning, your starting point? What did you start doing?
My beginning was nutrition. That was the starting point. And the thing is you're doing the work along the way too. And so often when people get to me, they've mastered certain aspects already. They've really dialed in certain things, but they're still missing pieces of the puzzle. For me, I was
Yeah.
missing the nutrition piece for sure.
Hmm.
And the day after I had this experience, it just came to me, Google a nutritionist that's cured themselves of an autoimmune condition. And I found a woman who was managing her MS very well. And that day I wrote her a check for $10,000 and bought her proprietary system. And she taught me how to feed myself. And at the time I was so weak and I couldn't cook. I couldn't do anything. So she had to put
Yeah,
together a very special plan where it essentially, if I was eating meat, I had to be able to just eat it with my hands. I couldn't hold
yeah,
utensils. I couldn't cut anything with a knife.
yeah,
So she was really great with me, and that was something that started the process. And then it was discovering the mind-body connection. Oh, our thoughts truly do become things.
yeah.
Whenever we have thoughts, neurochemicals are released into our body, either informing ourselves that we are safe and secure or
Hmm.
informing ourselves that we're in danger.
Right.
And that's what happens in chronic illness. We end up in this chronic anxiety state, this chronic state of the alarm bells going off in the system because
Yeah,
it's like, oh my gosh, we emergency. And that ends up being disease feeding because it
yeah,
informs our cells that, hey, we're not safe. So it downregulates our DNA, pops open more and more of these symptoms,
yeah,
and then more and more medications get prescribed. And then you need medications for your medications.
yeah.
And you can see how people end up in these very difficult situations.
Right.
And opposite is true for healing. So
Yeah.
when we learn how to master the mind and those thoughts, and trust me, you got to do it like it's your job when you first get started. It
Yeah.
takes the extreme focus.
Yeah.
And then it becomes embodied and natural. But when you first get going, oof, this is why we have a support system here. This is why we created this, because
Yes.
it is not for the faint of spirit to go through this healing experience, but it can be done. And so
Mhm.
when we do the opposite, we take away everything that is disease feeding, and then we bombard the body with health, whether that's nutrition, movement, the way we breathe. Our relationships are a huge piece. There is
Yeah.
a massive correlation between traumatic relationships and disease. And sometimes they've been out of the traumatic relationships for years, but guess what? They've taken over for their abuser and they're now doing that internally to themselves. And this
Yes.
is why so many women have autoimmune conditions, is
Hmm.
because it's just the way society is set up. It tends to
Yeah.
be women are just, it's easier for us to become victimized
Oh,
in
yeah.
things operate. And
Yeah.
so the traumatic relationships and these illnesses, they go hand in hand.
Yes.
And so, but it's clearing the cellular health. When we clear the cellular health, it now informs our cells, hey, it's safe. And then it
Hmm.
will start shedding all these toxins and
Yes.
it feels safe to do that. And then, you'll go through these cycles because you're shedding these toxins. And often people think they're getting worse when they're getting better because
Yes.
they're going through the detox in their body. And it's a normal part of the healing process. And it gets less and
Yes.
less and less until you have perfectly healthy cells. And now your DNA can upregulate. And naturally, what happens? Your symptoms disappear. Your medications get reduced until they're at nothing.
Yes.
And you're in the opposite loop. You're in the health building spiral.
Yes, that's so true. That's so true. I think, people don't realize, but our mentality plays such a huge role in our health. That people don't realize if you're going through traumatic events in your life, or if you've been through a traumatic event and you still haven't overcome those repressed emotions, that stays with you. And that eats up that stress, because 70% of illnesses are caused by stress. All
Yeah.
that stress in your subconscious or in your immune system. It's just breaking the walls of your immune system down. It's basically like open the doors and say, come illnesses, I'm here, and that's what a lot of people do. And, they hold on to all these traumatic events and that mind body connection, is all dismantled, and
Mhm.
it's so important to make that connection and to start doing things right and,
Mhm.
and stay consistent. I'm sure, was it hard for you when it came to consistency? Because some people they do it for a while and then they stop, and that's a big problem that I see too, is that some
Mhm.
people, they'll do it for so long and then they'll just stop when it should become just a natural part of you. If you do it and you really want to do it, after a while, you don't even realize you're doing it. For
Mhm.
me, that's how it was for me, at least.
Totally. And that's why in our program it's lifetime. We used to
Hmm.
have it as a year, and it's like, no, it doesn't end. Even me now, 6 years out, I'm still healing pieces. I
Yeah,
physically am doing better than ever. I feel like Benjamin Button. I look younger now than I did then. And
right.
and and I keep finding new pieces of the puzzle with this amazing team that we now work with.
Yeah,
And so this is the thing is exactly that. Often people get started and like I said in the beginning, you can feel like you're getting worse before you're getting better. So people give
yeah.
up. And
Hmm.
so that's why it needs to be broken down into that bite-sized, step-by-step process so that you
Yeah,
can follow it and that it's not overwhelming because that's the
yes,
biggest thing too. It's like, oh, I'm taking these supplements, I'm doing this diet, I'm doing, this regimen, I'm doing
right.
this mental health piece. It's too overwhelming for the brain. The brain does not like that because
Yes,
it just comes from our the way that we evolved. The brain eats out up the most energy in our entire body, and
yeah,
so it likes to preserve energy by avoiding change
yes.
because when you're creating new neural pathways it takes up a whole bunch of energy,
Mhm.
and the brain is going, no, 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 we need this for survival, so it avoids those changes. So that's why it's one tiny step at a time. And then
Yeah,
when it starts to really take root, then people get excited. Then they're like, okay, what else can I do? And then it becomes a really amazing piece. But that can take some people I work with, it can take them a year and a half to get there.
yeah,
It's like a slow process. And then other people, they've already done that internal work where they're ready to just go. And it's like six
yeah,
weeks, they're in remission, and then they're like, hey, next, what's next in my life? And it's
yeah,
like, and so you just don't know. It depends on the person. But what matters is that they start because
yes.
even a year and a half, oh, that seems like forever before I go into remission. It took you this many years to get this sick. So a year
Right.
and a half of your life of, really dedicated work to get to the point where you've reversed a disease and you now get to do whatever you want with your life is a very short amount of time in the grand scheme of things.
So it seems like you change your mindset, you keep positivity in your life, and you start to change your nutrition, the way you start doing things, and little by little, the more you're capable of doing, the more positive things you incorporate into your life. And do you ever use like supplements or vitamins? Do you incorporate that into your program as well?
It really depends on the person. Mostly, we don't do a lot of supplements because the nutrition is so good, so you don't need
Yeah,
them.
right,
So that's something that I find it's like you can throw out that entire closet of supplements that you gathered that like,
right.
And so very little in terms of supplementation. It depends on the person and the nutrition plan that they go on. So that's the thing too, is I learned along the way is it's not one size fits all with nutrition either. Every person has different genetic makeup, what they respond
Yes.
to, react to, depends how far into disease they are. Sometimes you feel like you're allergic to everything, you're reacting to everything. So the regimen has to get really strict, or people don't need that. It really depends on the individual. But
Yeah.
no, supplements are not really necessary when you are eating the proper nutrition for your body. And nutrition doesn't work until you clear the cells. You could have the best diet in the world. And so sometimes people come in and they're on an amazing nutrition plan and they're still having severe symptoms. Well,
Mhm.
if the cells are bogged down with all these neurochemicals, heavy metals, you could have parasites, all kinds of stuff, fungal things going on, because now the body is not able to flush the way it used to. So all this
Yeah.
buildup happens. There's viruses in there, bacteria, you name it. And
Right.
so what happens is the cell's receptors are so full and bogged down with all of these things that proper nutrition can't even get in to build the DNA.
Yeah.
So that's why nutrition is very important, but it's not the end all be all. We have to clear those cells as well.
How did you clear your cells? How did you start to detox your body?
So it's so funny. I can tell you about it now in hindsight, but at the time I was like bumping into walls and running stuff. I had no idea. I was just, I was like, oh, this is working. And and even when I started helping people heal, I'm like, I don't know how this works, but it does. It's like I didn't make the rules, but I know how to follow them. It wasn't until 2023 that I went and studied with Greg Braden in Sedona, and he
Hmm.
started talking about molecules of emotion and how they become attached to the cells and they won't release until your body feels safe, until it's out of fight or flight. And so he
Yeah.
explained it how animals in the wild, how they work, because they're not really conscious of their consciousness. They just do.
Right.
They just exist. So
Yeah.
how what would happen is, say a deer was being chased by a cougar. Well,
Hmm.
it is now flushed with all these neurotoxins that are
Yeah.
really great in the moment, gives you adrenaline, runs and helps you run. What a deer will do afterwards is once it's safe, it'll lie on its side and it will run it out. So removing them from the cells and flushing
Hmm.
them from the system. Well, we don't do that. We
Yes.
have all of our memories of all the bad things that happened to us, and then we keep
Right.
reliving them in our heads over and over,
Yeah.
re-releasing those neurotoxins into the system. And so I didn't know that, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense that, now our receptors of our cells are full of heavy metals, they're full of these neurotoxins, they're full of insert thing here, environmental
Yeah.
chemicals. And and so for myself, when I was going through it, I didn't really know what I was doing, but
Yeah.
it was, just really self-awareness was my biggest key piece. In fact, when I ended up going back to school so I could explain the mind-body connection and helping people
Yeah.
heal and have vocabulary, and I ended up creating therapy modality called awareness therapy because that was the number one key is paying attention. What's
Yeah.
going on internally in my thought processes, and do they serve me?
Right.
Is this going to help anything? Just
Yeah.
asking yourself that question will help in moving the healing process forward.
I love that. I love that. So if you had to say step one, what would you tell people how to begin?
Step one is exactly that, watching your thoughts. You don't even need to do anything about it because that will come naturally.
Hmm.
It's just watching the thoughts. And often you will realize that a lot of the thoughts that you have are not your own. They were
Yeah.
programmed into you somewhere along the way.
Hmm.
And so the self-criticism is a huge piece. And
Yeah.
instead, and then now that I look back on it, I would criticize myself for criticizing myself. No,
Right.
Kristen, we don't talk.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
like, it's this catch 22. So something I learned along the way, and it was actually when I went on a spirit quest.
Yeah.
And it really showed me how I was doing this to myself. So something that I learned along the way was let's replace those thoughts with new ones that are more gentle. And how I do that is if I have self-criticism come up, which doesn't happen a lot now because it's
Yeah.
again, it becomes embodied, it becomes second nature. But when you're first working on it, I would talk to myself like I was a toddler. Oh my
Hmm.
gosh, it's okay, sweetheart. Everyone makes mistakes. And this is how you'll do it differently next time. So make
Right.
amends where you can, say, apologize, and just do better. That's okay. And
Yeah.
it's amazing how things shift. And you notice things around you shift as well because your internal landscape becomes your external landscape. And
Right.
that's the number one is the relationship with yourself. So often people are so kind to other people, they're so giving to other people. And the way they talk to themselves, they would never say out loud to another human being. So it's like,
Right.
why is that acceptable for you and not someone else? You're out there forgiving people for some pretty shitty stuff, let's be
Yeah.
real. And yet you won't let yourself off the hook for an innocent mistake.
Yeah. So true. So very
Mhm.
true. After you get through that point when you start dealing with your emotions better and you start accepting things and you start letting go of things and you start the healing process,
Yeah.
you then take the next step is focusing on, okay, how am I treating my body? How am I treating, the inner self? And then start looking at different ways you could start incorporating better nutrition into your life and better different ways of living.
Yeah. So when we start people off, we start with both. The nutrition piece is really important. It is because it's the building blocks of your cells. So as your
Yeah,
cells get flushed, you want to give those proper building blocks so your DNA can rebuild itself at the same time.
exactly.
So this is why at first it's like, this is why the support is important and the community. And people are like, I've been there. I don't worry, this is normal. And because it's like, what's happening? And and so at first there's a lot of confusion, just like anything. When you start anything
Yeah,
in life, there's typically a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration, a lot of resistance, and that's
yeah,
just that is how it goes. And so the path to healing is first we start with a relationship with ourselves, that internal relationship, whether it's with food, how we move our bodies, how we're breathing, because often too, when we have that chronic anxiety, everything's tightened up. You're not
yes,
getting oxygen in proper places. And this is why the extremities are usually the last to heal because of the
yeah,
circulation piece. And so typically it's the inside job in the beginning, and then you keep going. So a lot of things out there teach just this initial part, but we don't want to
yeah,
backslide. We want to keep going in that health building movement. And then it's like, okay, now it's my next step of healing. Then it's facing all the things that you didn't
right.
have to face because you were sick. And that was an amazing excuse because you couldn't do anything. I couldn't do anything about this relationship. I couldn't do anything about this job. I couldn't do anything about,
Yeah,
my living environment because I was too sick to do it. And this is why it's like, okay, I got you. And I'll hold your hand and support you because often then you have to make some tough decisions. And I know
right.
I did. It was like, oh, now that I'm in this place where I can function, I'm now going to have
Yeah.
to make decisions about that relationship. I'm now going to have to make decisions about what am I doing with my career and my life. And these things can be very exciting and they can also just be terrifying because it's
Yeah,
something you were able to deny thinking about.
right.
And now it's right in your face. And so
Yeah.
then it becomes more about your relationship with others, your environment. What kind of life do you actually want to live now that you're healing?
Hmm.
And then from there you go into a third stage, and this is one that where you're just in full empowerment. The third stage is okay, I have my life back. I made those hard choices. I'm empowered. I showed myself who I am and what I can be.
Yeah.
Now, what type of life do I want to live? And
Yeah.
that's when it gets really exciting. And that's when the person goes, including myself, I walked this path. Wow. I am so
Yeah.
glad. I'm so glad I took that leap
Yeah.
and that I just decided I was going to change my life.
Right. Oh, I love that. I love that. Now, where can people find your program?
Yeah, so we have a couple opportunities for people, and it really depends on what they're going through. So we have a Power to Heal program. I love it. It's what we started with. It's our cornerstone, and we've now helped hundreds of women overcome all kinds of different illnesses. So it's an amazing group of just powerhouses, and it's so good. So that's called the Power to Heal program, and you can sign up for our free mini course, which will really deep dive what I'm talking about here and get a
Yeah,
good understanding and see if this is something that resonates. And so
right.
that is at modernhealthsolution.com/register. If
Hmm.
you go to that, and if you're someone who isn't in a chronic illness, and you are living with chronic anxiety and depression, which is a precursor to chronic illness,
Yep.
or or you're in a traumatic relationship or you've overcome one and you're kind of stuck with what to do with that, then
Yeah.
we have something called the collective. And so that's more broad. And that you can find at modernhealthsolution.com/services. And there is tons of free education and courses in there. We have 18 different practitioners on board, all the way from medical doctors to Reiki masters. And so it is way more general in terms of healing and getting true knowledge. So you don't have to go down the Google rabbit hole. These are
Yeah.
people that know what they're doing, they know what they're talking about, and have seen amazing results with people. So there's tons of opportunity to come and join us and be part of our community.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Now, if you had to take today's conversation, you really wanted to emphasize on some important factors, what would you like to tell our listeners?
That you are a magnificent being. People
Yes.
that go through this level of adversity are
Hmm.
meant for huge, huge things. And and absolutely, you can overcome these illnesses. I have not seen one. I have not seen one case. We've been through some tough stuff, but to me, the only way to fail is to quit. That's the
Right.
only way. So just do not give up.
Right.
Hope, keep that hope alive because that is what will spark. The
Yes.
hope will lead to faith, and then the
Yes.
faith will lead to full belief, and you
Hmm.
will see your life transform in a way that you couldn't even imagine. And sometimes when you're in the depths, you're like, I just want it to be different now. I just want it to change now.
Yeah.
And the thing is you'll look back after about 6 months and go, oh my gosh, that happened so fast.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so just know, absolutely know without a shadow of a doubt, you can heal yourself. There is no person that is left out from that.
Oh, 100%. I love it. I love it. Now, before we go, just tell everybody again your website so they can go visit you.
Sure, it's modernhealthsolution.com. No S. I'm an entrepreneur. I should have known better than to name a website that you could put an S on the end, but I didn't. So modernhealthsolution, no S.com, and would be so glad to invite anyone in that resonates with this conversation.
Oh, I love it. This has been amazing, Dr. Kristen. I loved having you on the show today. You have so much amazing information and knowledge to share with our listeners today. And I love that all the different tips and tools and strategies that you mentioned, and that you really emphasize on how important it is to really work on your mind and your body and really focus on, the end goal and thinking about the level of empowerment you can receive if you go through this, and that nobody has to accept what they're going through in life. If you're going through any types of struggles, any obstacles in life, any crisis in life, life doesn't have to stay like that. If you have an illness that you're battling, life does not have to be like that. If you have a disease, life doesn't end. There is always a way to improve your health, to improve your mind, to improve your overall quality of life. And so for people out there, it's definitely possible. And you just have to seek help, and the help is there. And I love the fact that you're there for people like that, and that you're giving people direction, help, and nurturing them so they can actually feel better and recuperate and improve their overall quality of life. So thank you so much for what you do. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for creating this amazing channel and opportunity for people like me to be able to speak the truth. It's so important, and especially in the era we live in now. So thank you, Stacey, and all the people that listen to your show. It's kindred spirits, and we all get to rise together and create this new earth. It's
Yeah,
time.
it's time. It's definitely time. Yes. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. You have a great day.
You as well.